Hello, BookTube. We're going to continue with this library tour. Feels like I did a weird interval library tour, but it was part of the whole thing. Some of my interruptions have changed. Some of my interruptions have gone away, so I figured might as well do another shelf. Because we're running against the clock here. I don't know how we're going to get the rest of this little book room done in the rest of 2019. This next shelf is still miscellaneous, but not only does it have transverse books, it also has facing books. It's a mess, an absolute mess. So we'll do the facing book first, one that's just sitting on the shelf, sideways, looking out at the world. And this is Richardson Wright's book, The Gardener's Bed Book, which is all about little daily meditations and literary squibs and practical advice about gardening. And I got it and had it by my bedside for months when I was contemplating making a garden of my own. And I am still contemplating that. I am still contemplating that. I will try to do that this coming spring. But I loved it. I thought the book itself was utterly charming. Then this next one is a little thing. It's a collection of Yeats poetry selected by Shahini, a tiny little UK mass market paperback that I somehow find myself going to. I have much bigger Yeats collections of poetry, but I find myself going to this one more often than any of those others and carrying it around with me. I don't quite know why. Okay, then we have a book that really belongs in the previous bookcase. This is Literary Essays and Pieces by George Steiner, No Passion Spent. It's a collection of the kind of literary miscellanies that we saw a lot of in the last bookcase. That there is stuff in that bookcase that is not that really needs to be in this bookcase, so that all the stuff, you know what I mean. Then we'll continue on with the transverse books here. This one is a memoir by Penelope Lively. This is Dancing Fish and Anemones. I thought it was fantastic. Or Ammonites. Dancing Fish and Ammonites. I loved it. I loved it a lot more than I've ever loved this author's fiction. And a graceful, very thoughtful little book. Same thing with her book on gardening. It also was a nonfiction, a memoir, and I loved it. Then what is this? Oh, okay. This is old. This is from the 1930s. This is in the Metropolitan Museum of Art. There is a little blue hippo named William. That is William. You can't see how beautiful he is, but he is glazed blue, and he's from ancient Egypt, and he's 4,000 years old. And this is a book, William and His Friends. And it is a little book of all of the animals at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. So just that. There's William and all of his little animal friends. Just a delightful thing. And the kind of thing that, if you see this sort of thing at a used bookstore from 1930s, from the mid-1930s, you have to get it. You have to give it a home. You can't let it wander around in the cold wilderness after that. Then what is this? Oh, okay. All right. This is a book that I like. This is a book, of course, it's going to be in this room. This is Present Day Problems by William Howard Taft. A collection of his prose, his prose was about as exciting as he was. He was a very stolid, non-controversial prose author. Very solid, very foursquare. But my friend Sam saw this, I don't even know, 15 years ago in a used bookstore, and he by that point he had endless drunken evenings of listening about William Howard Taft. So when he saw this, he had to get it. And it's one of my two Taft books. I have lots of books about Taft, but it's one of two books I have that were written by Taft, and I go back to it. I can't help but hear it in his Ohio voice. And what is this one? What is this little thing? Ooh. Oh, okay. This is by Francis Thompson. This is a little. And there's the book plate from Laureates here in Boston. This is a tiny little biography of Shelley. It isn't really a biography in any strict sense of the word. It's more a short meditation. And I have gone back to it many times because I find it so insightful. In some ways more insightful than big galumphing Shelley biographies at 600 and 700 pages, so I kept it. Okay, all right. On the last shelf we saw Dog Songs by Mary Oliver. This is very similar. This is the writer Anna Quinlan, and this is her book Good Dog Stay. There is our author. And this is it's a short book. It's a meditation on dogs, but it's mainly a meditation on dogs as they're leaving you. Dogs as they're aging. Their faces are getting grayer. Their eyes are dimming. They're slowing down. They're sleeping a lot, and you don't want what's coming. They have been your best friend, and you want them to just go on being your best friend. You can forget about the speed of their metabolism until those last years, and then even before they start to fail, you know they're going, and you want them to stay. You want them to stay. You want them to obey that command on a metaphysical level, not just a literal level. And this is a very good book on that subject. The Last Walk is also a very good book on that subject. And of course, I'm going to read books on that subject and probably keep it because I've been through that so many times. So many times. I'm not at that now. I'm not going through that now, thank God. I have a young, very young, energetic dog. But I know that it's going to feel like 2 minutes. One day it's going to feel like only 2 minutes have passed. Suddenly Frida's not going to bounce out of bed. Or she's going to turn down a walk, or she's going to feel the cold in a painful way instead of just right now. She doesn't like the cold, and she doesn't like the wet weather at all. But she can troop through it like anybody. And there's going to come a time when that's going to be a deep ache in her bones, and it's going to feel like 2 minutes from now, and I know that. So I'm not in that position now, though. Oh, okay. All right, great. This is The Owl Who Liked Us Sitting on Caesar by Martin Windrow, who took in a tawny owl and just lived with the owl in his apartment. And there's a surprising number of books like that on people living with owls. And they're all wonderful. I've never read one that wasn't good. And this one too. I think this has a pub sheet from 2014. I believe I reviewed it, but I loved it. Whether I reviewed it or not, I loved it. Then we have a classic reference work for murder mystery fans. This is Mystery Inc., INK, all about sub-kinds of mysteries, a list of different poisons and what their effects are and how you detect them, lists of all kinds of ingenious murder devices that have been used in various murder mysteries over the century. It's such a delightful one-stop shop for reference for murder mysteries just in general. It's so much fun to read. Okay, this is Edwin Way Teale. You've seen him before many times in this library tour. He was a natural historian and naturalist writer in the mid-20th century, and he wrote a quartet of books that's very famous on following the seasons, winter, spring, summer, and fall. But he did a whole bunch of other stuff. There are a bunch of books of his scattered throughout this room and the other room. And this one has a sentimental value for me. This is The Golden Throng, his book about bees. Bee research has moved on from when he wrote this book, I think in the 1950s. 1940. But it hasn't moved on in its essentials. We knew even in 1940 that bees have an incredibly developed language, and that it's not what humans stupidly refer to as rote instinct. Their language is adaptable to their environment. They describe the things they see to people, to bees who haven't seen it. And research has gone on from there, but that itself is a staggering realization. Once you realize that and think about it for even a minute, it's a staggering realization that happens. And research has gone on from there, but it's never been more beautifully written about than in this book. Edwin Way Teale could be very, very eloquent when he wanted to be. And it has a sentimental value for me as well, because me sainted Ma, when she was alive, had a thing about bees. She didn't like them at all, and the feeling was mutual. So whenever I would get a new book about bees, I would send it to her, just to tease her. And she, on a nightly phone call, she would say, "I got your book. What are you, wise? That's your mother you're poking fun at, you know?" But then the book would be on her coffee table. It would be on display for her guests for weeks. So when I see bee books, I automatically have a little bittersweet smile, because those are fun memories. And the bitter part of the bittersweet comes from the fact that I wish they weren't memories. I wish she were still here. I wish I could take the first 5 people I see today, the first 5 garbage people, the first 5 people who are insane, who have soiled pants, who are vicious or mean-spirited or cruel, who are, in other words, wasting their 70 years on Earth. They have that time. They don't have any other time. They've never been here before. They're never going to be here again. No part of them is going anywhere else. They are just wasting their time here. They're just determined to waste it. The first 5 people that I see like that, I'm going to say, okay, well, here are 5 people that I don't have anymore who didn't waste their time. And what I'd like is to take your time away, have you just disappear in a cloud of dust, and give it back to that person so they can be back here. That's what I think. The first 5 people that I see that, I'm going to say, okay, well, you're 30 years old and you're going to waste the next 50 years. Can I have Carl Sagan for the next 50 years? Can I have Stephen Jay Gould for the next 50 years? Can I have Julia Child for the next 50 years? Can I have me Sainted Ma for the next 50 years? And instead of the time you're going to waste, because they eagerly wanted it and used it right up to the end. That got dark, didn't it? One way or another. It's a book about bees. It's really good. It's probably not available. Okay. All right. We saw this book already. This is an explicit double. This is The Moral Obligation to Be Intelligent, Selected Essays by Lionel Trilling. We saw the hardcover just a week ago. There's no reason I should have both these books. And once again, the paperback, just like with the hardcover, the dust jacket of this book shows Lionel Trilling hawking on tobacco, just because you have to know that he's serious and contemplative. You have to know he's a real person. And the only way you're going to know that for sure is if he's smoking. If he's burning his own lung tissue, then you must know that he's a real thinker. And I didn't like the cover design of the hardcover, so I put stickers over it. And I didn't like the cover design of the paperback, which was the same picture, so I put the Brandon Routh Superman over it instead, just because I don't want to look at it. But I shouldn't have both, either way. Although now that I've said this, one of the if I were to get rid of one of these two, they'd have to go back into the used book market with the stickers on them. This is another book that we've seen before. We saw a new-ish reprint, a paperback reprint. This is William Bolitho. This is 12 Against the Gods. This is an introduction by Alexander Woollcott, which the new paperback edition does not. I think because no one had the rights to it or didn't know that it existed. It's a terrific communal, an assemblage of 12 short biographies that is just amazingly good. So well written, so playful and energetic. At one point in the middle of one of these things, he starts a paragraph with, "Can we pause to be indignant?" And some of the characters are well known now, and others have faded. I once again shouldn't have both. I love the book, but I shouldn't have both copies. So that's sort of a theme here, is that even this room, even the little book room, can undergo some work. Okay, this is Mary Carolyn Crawford. Boy, oh boy, this was such a good book. This is old. Let's see how old this is. 1908, so over 100 years old. This is St. Botolph's Town. This is an illustrated sort of anecdotal history of the colonial history of Boston. And I don't think that it exists anymore, but I love it. I ought to have all my Boston history books together. I don't, but I ought to. Okay. All right. This is a fantastic edition. Some of you will have seen these on Olive, on a Book Olive. Did a great video a little while ago. If I remember, I'll leave a link to it, about her love for Reader's Digest classics. Once upon a time, for the better part of a decade, Reader's Digest made hardcover editions of classics from the canon, and some of those hardcover editions are beautiful. In fact, most of them are. They're just beautiful. They're actually editions worth having. And I love the editions of Mark Twain. This is Roughing It. But I also have, somewhere in this room, I would hope, I have Innocents Abroad. I for a long time loved the his two famous travel pieces of nonfiction. This one has little period black and white woodcuts throughout, but it also has this, the fake saddle leather and whatnot. I'm hoping that somewhere in this room I also have Innocents Abroad, but those two are beautiful Reader's Digest editions. When I was watching that video of Olives, I was extremely envious, because if I went to a library book sale or something like that, and I saw a box full of those, I'd probably get them all. I've had them all at one point or another. I love their Moby Dick. I found their Moby Dick just a little while ago. In fact, it might have been on when I had a BookTube channel. I might have hauled it on this channel. And I think someone sent me the Reader's Digest Moby Dick as well. And it was, I might have one of those copies now, but I was looking at it, I was thinking, how many copies of Moby Dick do you need? You have like 20 copies of this book. That's insane. I don't know how many Moby Dicks are in this room. We'll find out as time goes on. Okay, all right. This is Brendan Gill's book here at the New Yorker. It's a classic behind-the-scenes look at one of the greatest magazines of all time. I love the book. The jokes, believe it or not, even after all this time, the jokes still land. The jokes are still funny. A lot of the potted portraits of the people involved, writers, the editors, are still funny and still really insightful. I have my issues with the book, mainly involving its portrait of John O'Hara, a staple writer at the New Yorker. Brendan Gill could be very venomous. He's a fantastic writer, but he could be very venomous. And I believe that his portrait of O'Hara in this book set the reading world's response to O'Hara for the ensuing century, and totally unfairly. There are all sorts of in-office anecdotes that you could tell about Brendan Gill that no one did. He it's a classic example of the winners writing the history. So you have to take it with a grain of salt, and I don't think a lot of people did. But anyway, but it's still a classic, and you see it all the time. It's not in print anymore, I don't think, but you see it at used bookstores all the time, and it's if you ever read the New Yorker and loved it, I love the New Yorker. If you ever read it and loved it, you have to read Brendan Gill's book. There have been a whole bunch of other books on the New Yorker, but nothing comes close to how good this one is. And I shouldn't, I am playing dirty pool here because I don't like his portrait of John O'Hara, but I do like his portrait of James Thurber, and the portraits are equally venomous. So I should pick a side. I guess I did pick a side. Then this next one is Richard Dawkins. This is The God Delusion, his classic, mega best-selling New Atheist tract. The American hardcover has a mirrored cover because sort of an inside thing for you to that God comes from you, God is you, God is a reflection of you. We on this channel we did a read along with David Murphy of Christopher Hitchens' book, God is Not Great, and found a lot of fault with the book. It's a sloppy, poorly organized and poorly argued book, attacking organized religion in a very haphazard way. And critics have often made the point that Dawkins' book is much better on all of those fronts. And I would say his book is better on all those fronts, but not much better on all those fronts. I feel certain that if David Murphy and I in 2020 were to do a read-along of The God Delusion, we'd have a lot of the same objections, maybe just pitched to a higher level of erudition. But I think we'd find a lot of the same flaws in the book. So maybe we'll do that. I don't know. He seems to have left BookTube. He doesn't seem to make videos anymore. If he did, the first read-along that I would propose for 2020 would be Jordan Peterson. I think that would be hilarious. And I think it would get the larger YouTube's attention. But, oh, okay. All right. This is great. This is, what is the press? Who is the press that did this? Such a Chin Music Press in Seattle. Did this, and I fell in love with it. This is Zach Davidson. This is Yurei. Japanese ghosts, but not just any Japanese ghost. One particular kind of Japanese ghost that has become familiar to Americans. From The Ring. There's one particular kind of Japanese ghost that is called Yurei, and has a particular kind of origin story, a particular kind of a set of traits that you can recognize it by. And I learned so much from this book, and yet I loved it as well. It was totally beguiling. And I reviewed it. I think I reviewed it for The National on the other side of the world. I think they just went for it because by that point, my editors knew me well enough to sort of take some of my suggestions, even though it wasn't their kind of a book at all. If I can find a review to any of these things, I will try to leave links down below. The links are a little bit sloppy, a little bit haphazard, because for 10 years, I was the managing editor of Open Letters Monthly, an online literary journal named Open Letters Monthly. And then Open Letters Monthly, the site was a Bluehost, and it was old, and the plugins were failing and whatnot. And the editorial team had a shake-up, and we did a rebranding of the name and became Open Letters Review. And all of that vast body of content had to be moved. The old Open Letters site had to be turned into an archive that was self-sustaining so that we didn't have to constantly go in there and fix it every single time something broke, which ended up being every day. But also, all the content from the writers who moved over to Open Letters Review had to be moved over, and that was a huge amount of content, even just for me. That was just my archive alone was enormous. So when I am leaving links to pieces down below for these library tours, I am looking for the pieces for the written reviews, in case any of you are interested in that. And often when I find them, they are broken links to the old Open Letters Monthly things. So I have to go in to Open Letters Review. I have to go into the back of the site and re-put the pictures up there, re-put all of the links and the breaks and the paragraph stuff and whatnot. So I don't doubt that it looks a little messy, but it's a work in progress. Oh, okay, and then the last one. This is a larger version, a big black and white illustrated version. This is Richard Halliburton's Complete Book of Marvels. Richard Halliburton, that is our author in younger days. Traveled all over the world. He was one of the last people to be able to travel all over the world the way he did. The kind of entitled, go everywhere, see everything way that he did. Him and me are two of the last people who were able to do that, and his travel writing is amazingly good. I think I have this book and one other. He did it. There are a whole bunch of Halliburton books out there. There are in used bookstores, yard sales, and whatnot. You can't find them new anymore, but they are all worth getting and savoring again, because he really puts you there. He really brings you to where he's going. So it's travel writing of a kind I would wish someday to write. Maybe I will. But anyway, that is the next shelf here of just miscellaneous stuff, and we've got a whole bunch more shelves to go, but I'm not going to do 2 of these a day. This will be the only time, so I'm going to wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.